Well, good morning again. Welcome to Sylvan Way. If this is your first time, my name is Ian. I'm one of the pastors here. Welcome in. If Sylvan Way is your home, or if you've been gone for a while and you've come back and you realize that the pews are no longer here, welcome back. We're glad you're here. We are a church that exists to help people meet, know, and follow Jesus. We just finished this series on discipleship. It was called Different, and we're just looking at these ways that we follow Jesus, that we're supposed to be following Jesus. Like following Jesus means following Jesus. And following Jesus means we apply what he's asking us to apply. And we do it within community, that others come around us and we come around others to encourage each other, to spur one another on, to move towards the goals that God has called us. And ultimately, as followers of Jesus, we help others meet, know, and follow Jesus. Like that is why we're here. And those are some tough messages for some people, but don't worry, today will be even tougher. Because we're entering a new series called Spare Change, where we're looking at biblical finances. Now, preparing for this message this week, I was reminded of a story. I think it was probably 17, 18. I had my driver's license. I picked up one of my friends. We lived in Illinois, just outside of Chicago, and he was having a hard time. And so we just started driving. And if you've ever driven with me, and you know when you're talking, I miss every exit. So we're talking, he's poor, something, I can't even remember what was going on. I just remember we were going, and it was like evening, and then it was night. And if you know the roads in Illinois, like the farther away you get from Chicago, it goes from like 6-lane highways to 2-lane highways. And before you know it, you're in the middle of cornfields. So here we are in central Illinois. Don't ask how we got there. I don't know. We just ended up there. And this is the early 90s, and no one had GPS, and I didn't have a Thomas guide. That's an ancient GPS method where you would, for those who don't know, I didn't have one in my car because I didn't expect to go anywhere. And here we are. We're in central Illinois. We've been driving. There's a detour. We get off track, and next we find ourselves surrounded by cornfield. Surrounded by cornfield, no idea where to go, and we are lost. We don't know how to get back. We don't see any lights. All we see is corn and dirt roads and gravel roads and one like moderately paved road. Like, where are we to go? We were absolutely lost. What we needed was directions. So we drove around for a little bit, and we happened upon we found a little shopette that was just about to close. Fortunately, they were open. We said, how do we get back? And they gave us directions, and they told me something key that I'll never forget, that if you're stuck in cornfields in central Illinois, that these streets go north and these go east and west. And I'm like, oh, wish I would have known that before. But I tell you that story because I think a lot of us, when it comes to our finances, we might be lost. We might have had some things that have gotten our way, some problems, situations that have give us a detour, and we ended up in a place that we never expected. That maybe we're looking at like, man, it's so hard to live. We're living paycheck to paycheck. We're not sure how to get back. And that's why we're getting into this series. And it's looking at what does God's word say, not to what I say, not what this church says, but what does God's word say when it comes to our faith and our finances. I found it interesting that the average American is carrying $120,000 in debt, and that doesn't include mortgage. That's student loans, credit cards, car payments, other kind of unsecured loans that they are carrying $120,000, the average American. That's a lot. When it comes to marital issues, you know what one of the top marital issues is? Money. Yeah, I didn't even need to say it. We know it's money. Who's spending too much? Who's not spending enough? Who's requiring us to save too much? Are we on a budget? Are we not on a budget? And we're fighting over this thing. Do we join our accounts? Do we not join our accounts? Oh, are we supposed to do this? Are we not supposed to this? And we fight and we fight. Some of us don't even know where all our money goes. I mean, if I had $1 for every time someone said this to me, man, I don't know where all my money went. I mean, if I had that, I could at least loan them some money, but we don't know where our money goes. So, and some of us are in financial trouble. Some of us have been in financial. Some of us are currently lost, and we need help. So we're gonna look to the book of Proverbs today for some wise guidance, how to live wisely. The book of Proverbs was written about 1,000 years before Jesus by a guy named Solomon. He was the wisest man, and he was the richest man. And he gives us these sayings, these collections of sayings. There's 31 Proverbs that you could read, and it's got all these different things, and it addresses life, but he addresses money, and he addresses the heart of our existence, really, and how for us to stay on the right path when it comes to relationship with God. I mean, as you turn there, let's turn to Proverbs chapter 3. If you have a Bible, there's a Bible underneath in some of the seats. We got to get more Bibles to replace the ones that have been given away, which is a good thing. Proverbs chapter 3, verse 5 and 6. As you're turning there, I just want us to think for a second. What brings financial problems or financial troubles in our life? Just think about it. What brings the financial troubles? Is it maybe bad investments? I thought this was going to pay out. I thought this was a good investment. I thought this was going to go someplace. Or maybe it's poor spending habits. We're not tracking our money. We're spending too much here. We're spending without even knowing where all it's going. Or maybe it's credit cards. I think it's credit card debt. And here's the crazy thing about credit cards. The more money you borrow, the more money they're going to charge you in finances charges. So it's like you're just paying it off so you can pay them more money. And then you're paying off a credit card and you end up paying double over the course of you having it. Or maybe you never pay it off at all. But what brings those financial troubles into our life? There's a common denominator in each one of those situations. The bad investments, poor spending, and credit cards. It's us. It's our credit card, it's our investment, it's our spending. It's you and me. So Solomon opens with this key idea in Proverbs 3, verse 5 and 6. He says, trust in the Lord with all your heart. Say heart. And do not lean on your own understanding. In all your ways, acknowledge him, and he will make straight your paths. And he opens with this kind of this warning here. And this warning is don't lean on your own understanding. Don't trust your wisdom for everything you're doing because you may not know any better. I think a lot of people, we just don't know better or we just don't care when it comes to choices in our life. I remember when I was in the Navy, we would get young sailors coming first job, first time away from home, first time getting a regular paycheck. And one of the things that we would always tell them when we were introducing them and getting them indoctrinated into the ship is do not buy a car. Do not buy a car. We're talking E1, E2, E3, E4. Do not buy a car. Because I was stationed in Naval Station San Diego, and right outside the gate were predatory car dealerships. And they were preying on people, and we would warn them, don't buy a car, but inevitably, without fail, a sailor once a quarter would come up and, I bought a car. And you just want to so, I bought a car. Well, tell me about it. Well, it's already broke. How much is the APR? Well, it said it was a good deal. It was only 24%. These guys are paying way more than they need to. I mean, the average car, it's like 12% for a first-time buyer, maybe 15. They're paying 24, 30% for a car that doesn't even work, and we warn them, don't trust your own understanding. Listen to the wisdom that we are giving you. Don't buy a car. Solomon is conveying to us that if we want to be wise in living, we need to trust God. What does it mean to trust? That you have faith and you believe that God is true. That you believe that he knows best. That you believe that, that there's strength and ability that he has that you don't have. I mean, just think for a second about institutions that you and I trust regularly. A bank. You trust the bank that if I give them my money, that when I need it, I can come back and it's there. I mean, if your bank, you go there and say, sorry, we don't have it. You're like, what? I trusted you with my money. Hospitals. When you go to a hospital, you trust that they're going to get you through it and you'll be alive at the end. Like you trust these institutions, you believe in them, that they have strength, that they're going to do something that you can't. What Solomon is conveying here is that when you're wise, you trust God with everything. You trust God with everything. And how you do that is you acknowledge him in all things. What does it mean to acknowledge her? It's the Hebrew word yada. You say yada? That's your Hebrew word for the month. Yada means to know. It means to learn to know things. It's like a relational word that you need to, in all your choices and all your things, you need to acknowledge God. You need to be in relationship with God, that God is a connection point for you in the choices you make. And when you do that, when you acknowledge him, you have a relationship with him in all things. What does he do? He sets your path straight. He puts you on the right path. Now, this isn't just, hey, before you buy a car, pray about it. I'm sure that sailor, if he was a Christian, he probably prayed, oh, Lord, let this be the car for 24% APR, 400,000 miles and a leaky oil pan. Lord, let this be the car. But it's more than just praying about it. You should pray about things, yes, but it's also about listening to and being shaped by your trust in God. That you're listening to and you're being shaped in everything by your trust in God, knowing that he has your best interests at heart, that you can trust him with all things. I mean, it's hard to trust, isn't it? When I was a younger guy, I wanted to be a boat driver in the Navy, but there was a key thing that I had to accomplish in order to do that. I had to pass a second-class swimming test. Well, for me, if you didn't know, I failed the third class, the entry-level requirement into the Navy swimming test twice and barely passed it the third time. I had a great backstroke at the end. And you're not supposed to backstroke, but they let me do it. I barely got in the Navy because I couldn't swim. But if I wanted to get this, I needed to pass this test. So I found a coach. I found someone that could swim well. We went to the pool. And he got in the pool, and he said, swim a lap. I couldn't swim a lap. I was beating the water. I looked crazy. He says, I know what your problem is. You have to put your face in the water. I'm like, no way. If I put my face in the water, I can't breathe. And he says, you got to trust me. That when your face is in the water, your body is it's on the right trajectory. It becomes level with the water. And as you swim, you can breathe as much as you want when your head comes out of the water. But I had to trust him first. Usually those who don't like water especially don't like their face in water. But soon enough, I trusted him. I said, I want to do this. I want to have this in my life. I want to achieve this. I trusted him. I put my face in the water, and I was able to swim. Who knew? This is our big idea for today. This is what I want you to hold. It's all down on your notes. Trust God in all areas of your life, even money. It went silent. Amen. All areas, even money. I mean, following Jesus, let me say it this way. If you're following Jesus, it includes your wallet. If he's a discipleship of all areas of your life, it includes all areas of your life. I mean, the Bible itself has over 25 verses or references to money. See, Kevin knows. Kevin knows. A little under half of Jesus' parables, the stories he told about being in God's kingdom and living for him were about money. It's a key idea here. Why? Why does the Bible speak about it? Why does Jesus reference it? Because like sex and power, money is one of the things that hold our hearts captive. It's one of the last things that we want to turn over to God in our walk with him. One pastor in England in the 19th century said, the last area of a man's heart to be converted is his wallet. Because it's one of our last strongholds. It's like sex and power. It gives us some kind of identity. It gives us some kind of control. It has something on us, this power over us that we have to protect it. I mean, just even the fact that I've mentioned money this morning, some of you have already shut off. You pulled up your phones like this guy. I knew it. It was my first time he's talking about money. You're rolling your eyes like you're like, this is ridiculous. But let me say something. If I was to get up here this morning and say, I want to tell you how to be the wealthiest you ever could be, you would sit up, pull out your pen, your paper, and lean in. Because it's something that's going to benefit you. But what I'm going to bring you this morning will benefit you. It's not a get-rich-quick scheme. It's not easing money. It's looking at the Bible and saying, what is God's design for my finances? But let me say, when it ultimately comes down to brass tacks, it's about trust. Will you trust him in all things? Maybe this morning you've been trying your own ways. You've been leaning on your own understanding. You've not been acknowledging him or knowing him in your choices. But let me ask, how is that going for you? If it's not going well, then maybe there's an opportunity to try something new. See, the first principle I want to bring to you this morning is just a few verses down, Proverbs 3, 9, and 10. This is what Solomon says, just a few verses after to honor. He says a few verses after, trust the Lord with all your heart. Trust him in everything. He says this in verse 9. He says, honor the Lord with your wealth. Honor the Lord with your wealth and with your first fruits of all your produce. I mean, he's speaking to an agrarian society. That if you're a corn farmer, your first fruits, your produce is corn. If you're apples, vineyard, whatever it is, it's a physical food. You're to honor him with that and the wealth that you make. If you're a tradesman, if you're a banker, if you're a tax person, you're to honor him with your wealth. If you're a farmer, to honor him with your first fruits. The focus here is on honoring God. And what does it mean to honor? It means to put God first. So I did pass that swim test, and I ended up being a boat coxswain, which means I got to drive the boat. And thank you, Matthew. One of my duties was when we were in Hong Kong, I got to drive and pick up some dignitaries. But there's protocol for when dignitaries get in and out of a boat. That the junior people get in first, and the senior guy gets in last. And then the senior guy, when you get to the destination, because they're the most important, they get out first. Why? Because we're showing honor to that person. If you go and you're in a place where a king or a queen or a dignitary comes in, they would bow, they'd be silent, they'd turn to them. Why? Because they're honoring. So Solomon's point here is we're to honor God with our money, with our finances. And we do that by giving to him first. We make him a priority. I mean, you ever looked at the spending priorities you have? I got two banks. I got Wells Fargo and USAA, and they all have this little spending profile. Oh, man, groceries? That line's getting bigger every month. I got a big family. But I can see the priorities I have. Where is things going? Entertainment, shopping, groceries, utilities, house. Like, it's all there, and it shows me the priorities that I have in real time. Not the ones I dream in my mind. Oh, I'm such a giving person. I remember last year, that guy with the bell and the red bucket, I gave him a quarter. I'm so generous. In real time, I can look at my bank, and it's going to tell me, this is your priority. Now, here's the thing. Giving to God, it can be difficult for some. This idea of tithing or bringing an offering or giving to him. I remember when I was a young sailor, and the pastor got up and he was talking about tithing. It's a big word for 10%. That we're to tithe to the church. We're to give 10% to the church. And I'm thinking in my head, because I like math, I'm like, well, I'm an E5. I only make $36,000 a year. That's $300 a month. You know, that's a nice car payment. This is difficult. This is impossible. I can never do that. I'm barely scraping by. That's 30. I make 36. He wants me to give 3,600. I don't know if I could do it. And I struggled on and off, even with marriage, struggled with this idea of giving. I wasn't regular with it, or this came in the way, and it just didn't happen well. But one day my wife came to me, And she said, we have a family member that, like, they need money. They're trying to keep their kids in the school that they want to go, and all they need is $300 a month. And then, not even thinking, I was like, let's do it. Let's do it. So what did we do? We made it a priority. We looked at our finances and figured out what we were doing right and what we were doing wrong. We made that a priority. We elevated it up so we could take care of that need. See, when something is a priority, then you make it important. And then you can look at and prioritize all the different things in your life. Have you ever looked at your spending and said, where is all my money going? I mean, if you're someone you don't give, this idea of giving is out of the box, that's okay. But if you looked at your money and said, where is it all going? I mean, I found some things that we, in America, we waste tons of money, and we don't even know it. Subscription fees. You know, every single app has some kind of like hidden subscription. Like there's this Marco Polo app, right? Every time it tries to get me to subscribe, I don't want to subscribe. I just want the free thing. Every time I open it. And it makes it really hard to find that little X in the corner. But how many times have we inadvertently subscribed to something? Or we subscribe to something with every intention in the world that after 14 days, I'm gonna unsubscribe. 3 years later, you know, if you're paying $10 a month, over 12 months, that's $120 a year. That might not seem a huge amount, but if you have 10 apps like that, that's $1,200. If you let it go for years, it just keeps piling up. There's these subscriptions. Yeah, I was talking to one guy, him and his wife had a Netflix subscription, and he had one. Why? They didn't even know. He thought that he was sharing his wife's. He wasn't. He had his own subscription. So we have these subscriptions that we're giving that are just taking our money. I mean, here's a simple one, water bottles. Yeah, you're going to pay $1.50 to $2 for a water bottle, but you can go home to your refrigerator and fill the same one up for free practically. It's like pennies. Like that, all my kids have water bottles because I don't want to pay for 6 water bottles every day for 365 days. At $1 a bottle, that's a lot of money. Wasted money. I mean, there's other things like clothes. Like how many times have you bought an item of clothing that you've looked back and like, man, that's still in there with the tags on it. Wow, I really wanted it. It was going to be great, but I never wore it. Food, eating out. I wrestle like in the morning. I was like, man, I could make a meal that's going to take me about 10 minutes and cost me $3, or I can go spend $20 to $25 and have someone make it for me. I'm not going to tell you what choice I make. You see the difference. There's a $17 to $20 difference between making my own meal and having someone make it for me. That there's wasted money. That have you looked at your finances to see all where it goes? I look at it every quarter to see, is it all going in the right place? If I hit the wrong subscribe button, have somebody else subscribed to something that I didn't know? See, here's our point, though. We need to trust God in everything, down to the cent. Like, what are we doing with our money? And make God a priority in our life. See, when you prioritize, then you begin to minimize the waste that you have. Because you have a priority you need to meet. Then guess what? Verse 10 says, then your barns will be filled with plenty and your vats will be bursting with wine. Who doesn't want that? I mean, the picture here, as some have falsely used, is that it's kind of called the prosperity gospel. That if you give the church $300 today, brother, the Lord will give you back $3,000 by the end of the year. So $300, everyone. That's not what he's talking about. He's talking about if you're being a good steward with what God has given you, you have the proper priority in your life of giving to God first, and you've structured your finances well, that you will have more than enough for what you need. That is the picture that we get there. That your money will be used well. See, whatever you honor God in, that area begins to be shaped by God. I mean, you want God to honor your marriage. You want to put him first, and your marriage will be shaped by God. You want your work and your workplace to be shaped by God, then you prioritize God, and it's shaped by God. If you want your finances, your spending to be shaped by God, then you have him as a priority, and it will be shaped. Now, I get this question all the time. Why does God need my money? I thought he had a cattle on 1,000 hills, and he's the creator. Can't he just make money? No, that's the U.S. government. They just make money. No, God doesn't need your money. That's not the point. The point is you trusting and honoring him. I love what it says in Deuteronomy chapter 8, verse 18. It says, you shall remember the Lord your God, for it is he who gives you the power to get wealth, that he may confirm his covenant, his promise with you, that he swore to your fathers as it is to this day. I mean, the thing we see there first is that you are the one doing the work. That you need to work hard. You need to have a focus that you're going to honor God, not only in your finances, but in your work. How many times I've heard from people this kind of mindset? You know, if God would give me more, I would give more. I mean, I'm going to be honest. I've even thought this. This was years ago. We lived in Chula Vista, and the lotto, it got so big. It was like $100 million. And I'm like, Lord, if you just let me win the lotto, I will give 10%. No, 11%. Because someone's going to pray 10, and I want to pray 11. I'm going to give it to you. It's this idea, God, if you give me more, then I'll give more. But here's the picture that we're getting from this scripture, that God has already given you. He's giving you the ability, the knowledge, the skills to earn the wealth you have, to work in the way you do, to have what is already yours. So he's looking at it as like you give back. Remember him. Remember, it's God's the one who's giving you the breath. God is what's giving you all this. That's the focus. That we're to honor him with the gifts that we've already been given. Now let me give you this next one. This is my least favorite part. It's Proverbs 21:20. This is a great scripture. You can write it down. You can memorize it. It says this. It says, precious treasure and oil are in a wise man's dwelling, but a foolish man devours it. Is it that the picture we get here is a wise person saves. That we're talking about an agrarian culture. That there would be time between the harvests. That they'd harvest, they'd have their stockpile, and then they'd have to wait for the next harvest. So there was time. They couldn't run to the grocery outlet. They couldn't run to 7-Eleven or to Chick-fil-A. They had to wait. So the wise person saves and uses their resources wisely, and they have more than enough. But the foolish person consumes it all. And then they're left wanting, waiting. How am I going to get more? I'm all out. I'm in need because they didn't utilize their resources well. They weren't prepared for the season. So why do we save? We save for the future. Our next priority is to save. We save for the future. People are living longer because of health care and all these different things. We're living longer than we ever have before. But I read a statistic yesterday that 60 million baby boomers have zero money for retirement. 60 million people have no money to retire. That many are just living on their social security. There was no preparation for the future. And I'm not casting stones whatsoever. That we see that a husband and wife, they're married for 40, 50 years, and the wife's been stay at home, the husband passed away, and the wife's left with nothing. The other thing is we prepare for the unexpected. We save for the unexpected. Interesting statistics that close to 70% of Americans don't save. They live paycheck to paycheck. 70%. That's a lot. That's like this side of the room. Good job, this side. I mean, the average American has $400 in savings. $400. Do you know what the average deductible in car insurance is in America? $500. So if you get in a car accident, you don't even have the $100 extra to pay your deductible. I mean, just looking at countries, Qatar, which is in the Middle East, and Ireland, their GDP, their gross national product, they save 57%. The U.S., we borrow a ton every year. Looking at other countries and families, Switzerland and Luxembourg, they average families save about 18% of their money. 18%. While the average American is living paycheck to paycheck, spending more than they make. See, the priorities, is God is first, but the second one is save second. Prepare for the future. Prepare for the unexpected. See, let me just say, it's not lacking faith to save. Someone has said this, like, you don't need to save, God will provide. That's not in the Bible necessarily. Look at the story of Joseph in Genesis. God gave him a dream that there's going to be a plentiful season, 7 years of all this abundance and 7 years of famine. So what does he do? He saves for 7 years, storing away all this stuff so when the famine came, they could survive for 7. They were prepared. Are we prepared? Are we saving to be prepared? See, we're supposed to save before we spend. Proverbs 21:5, I'm going to read this to you. It says, the plans of the diligent lead surely to abundance, but everyone who is hasty comes only to poverty. Do we have a plan to save? I'm not telling you exactly all the things, but do you have an emergency fund for those unexpected things? A few $1,000s, you never know. Your brakes go out. This goes out, this breaks, your dishwasher, your microwave, whatever it is, it breaks. Do you have an emergency fund? Do you have a buffer fund that, 2 of your kids have a birthday in the same month and your daughter decides to go to school and you got to pay for it? Do you have a buffer? I'm not speaking from personal experience. Yes, I am. Do you have a buffer? Are you planning for the future? Like an IRA or solid investments, not get quick schemes, get rich quick, but are you planning for the future? But let me just say this, as Christians in our discipleship, knowing that we're here to help people meet, know, and follow Jesus, Ephesians chapter 4 gives us a better picture. That we not only save for the emergency, we don't only save for the future, but it says this in verse 28 of chapter 4 of Ephesians. It says, let the thief no longer steal, but rather let him labor, doing honest work with his own hands, so that he may have something to share with anyone in need. That we're not only to prepare for us, but we're prepared for the unexpected for others. That only takes place by saving. This is like next level saving. Not only just me, but those in need. So here we go. We got, give God first, save second, and then what does that leave us? It leaves us to live on the rest. Like, I don't know if I could do that. You know how much money I make? Like, to live on the rest? Like, I have all these bills. I have all this stuff going on. Let me give you a picture from Hebrews chapter 13, verse 5. It says this. It says, keep your life free from the love of money. The love of money is this picture of that being the priority in your life, that being the focus of your life, that if I just get more money, then I'll be okay. If I just get more of this, then I'll be okay. Keep your life free from the love of money. And what does it follow with? And be content. Be satisfied with what you have. And he goes on to say, for he has said, I will never leave you nor forsake you. That God won't leave you. We're going to dive into this contentment next week. But many of us are financially upside down because our priorities are upside down. We're spend and maybe save and maybe give. Or maybe we're spend and give and never save. Like we have these priorities where they in align with biblical finances. Are we being driven by what we want instead of being content with what we have? Next week, we're going to look at this great idea. Everything you own is really on loan. Because what you have with you now, you can't take with you in the end. See, the wise man, the wise person, the wise woman knows, trusts that God is with them in every situation. And that we can be content in what we have. So let me just summarize these principles. First is give first to God. Give first to God. Trust him with your finances. Make him the priority. Make that the shaping agent for how you spend and how you live. Next, save second. Save money for those, prepare for the future, prepare for the unexpected, prepare for whatever may come. And also, you never know when someone else is going to be in need. And you can help them in their deepest, darkest situation. And the third is live on the rest. I mean, just think, if you gave 10% and you saved 10%, you could live on 80%. Let me just tell you, I'm making like 50% more than I was when I was worried about, I don't know, I'm not that great with math, I could be off, than I was in E5. Making way more than I was then, but my lifestyle changed. Am I tracking my lifestyle? Am I just increasing it with more? The more I get, the more I could have. The more I get, the more I could spend. Let me just give you some wisdom. If you're driving a luxury car, you're going to have to pay luxury car prices. Because guess what? Their brakes aren't cheap, their steering wheels aren't cheap, their seats aren't cheap, the maintenance isn't cheap. If you're driving a luxury car, you're going to have to pay luxury prices. This is a principle in our lives. What are we accumulating that we have to then take care of, which then draws more on what we have? But if we give first to God, we save second, and we live on the rest and be content with what we have, it could transform our lives. Now, maybe someone here is like, I don't know, I don't give, I don't know where to start. And let me just say, if you're visiting or this isn't your church home, I'm not talking to you. If you're not following Jesus, I'm definitely not talking to you. I'm talking to Christians who are part of this church. And if you're not giving here, that's okay. I don't care. That's between you and God. But I will say it is a discipleship issue. And why am I bringing up money? Because it is a discipleship issue. It could be a stronghold in your heart. I don't even know who gives. So I'm not asking you to give. I'm asking you to look at your life and saying, is God the priority? Are you preparing for the future? And then living on what's left. See here, let me read this passage from 2 Corinthians. If you're looking for a place to start, 2 Corinthians 9, verse 7. It says, each one must give as he has decided in his heart. There's this picture that you're going to God, you're having this conversation. If you're married, you're bringing your spouse and you're having this conversation, and you're making a decision. This is what we're going to give. And it's not reluctantly or under compulsion. You're not doing it because I preached a sermon on it. You're not doing it because someone's making you. You're doing it because you feel like that's what God's calling to. And it finishes with, for God loves a cheerful giver. See, the next little thing there in your bulletin is faith and finances. It says giving isn't an obligation, but an opportunity. When we're talking about giving, it's not an obligation, it's the opportunity to partner with what God is doing. But what you need to do in your faith and finances is have a priority. Are you honoring God with your finances? And there's another thing I want us to look at is progressive. Are you having progress in your giving? One of the things that I try to do is I try to grow my giving every year. Yeah, if I can grow my giving every year by $50 a month, then man, I'm trusting God $50 a month more every year. It's just growing it. And maybe it goes from 10% to 11% to 12%. But it's increasing over and over. Because you know what? God, I'm content with what I have. And I want to honor you first and foremost. And I want to prepare for what the future. And I also want to be there when others are in need. So you may be asking, what's my next step? What do I do? Where do I start? Where do I go? You look there on your notes, and you can mark. If you have your notes, there's pens, you can mark where you're at. Maybe you haven't started giving. Well, then start. If this is in your church home and you go to another church, start giving there. If you're watching online and you're part of another church, start giving there. Give where God's called you to be. If you're occasionally giving, you were like me when I was a young sailor, like I give as I can, maybe start giving regularly. Take that step. If you're regularly giving, you want to move towards tithing, and tithing is the church word for 10%. The Bible talks a lot about bringing the tithe to the storehouse. It talks about tithing. Start moving to that. Start progressing slowly towards that. If you're tithing, maybe your next step is to grow your giving, to trust God more and more as you walk with Him. So as I kind of close this morning, if you want to remember these, we printed out some stickers. The stickers went really good last time. And they're on the back tables, right there in the back where the back row used to be, the back row Baptists used to sit. Now there's some tables and there's some stickers. These are free stickers. But it says, give first, save second, live on the rest. It's a great, put it on your refrigerator, put it next to your computer, put it on your water bottle, put it someplace to remind you the priorities that we should have when we're following God in our faith and our finances. This is free to you. Now, let me just say, if you don't go over there and grab a handful of them. There's one per person. If your spouse isn't here, you can grab two. But go ahead, you can grab one of these to remind you. But let me close this today and just ask you just to consider, where is God leading you in this? Where is he speaking to you? I mean, if you've completely shut down and you don't even want to hear anymore, it's almost over. It's almost over. I'm just speaking to those who call Sylvan Way home when I'm talking about give first, save second, live on the rest. Where is God leading you in those areas? Let's pray.